Welcome to Hot Topics on the Edge of NFT. I'm Richard Carthon. I'm here with my co-hosts Josh Krieger and January Jones. Join us for the latest news shaping Web3, blockchain, and digital assets.
Coming up, Gary Gensler's Resignation, the Game7 Web3 Gaming Report, crypto literacy gaps, and seasonally appropriate content, how to explain Bitcoin at the Thanksgiving table.
It's another production of Edge of Company, a rapidly growing media ecosystem, empowering the pioneers of Web3 tech and culture.
Let's get started.
Big news that we missed last week because it happened while we were taping this show, but Gary Gensler, the SEC Chair, has announced his resignation effective January 20th, 2025. He's been a polarizing figure for the crypto world for his perceived overly aggressive crackdown on the industry. In the last full fiscal year, according to the SEC's Office of the Inspector General, 18% of the SEC's tips, complaints, and referrals were crypto related, despite the crypto markets comprising less than 1% of US capital markets. So Richard and Josh, do you think Gary has a bad rap? Isn't he just doing his job?
Yeah, I think unfortunately what we've seen with Gary Gensler, after what happened with FTX, there had to be a stance of being pretty strict towards Web3. There were some things he was doing before the whole collapse happened in the last bear cycle occurred that was already very anti-crypto, but even more, he ramped up even more so after that happened. And obviously for a lot of us in Web3, we have been looking towards finding a different direction that is more favorable towards creating structures that allow for growth and not to stifle innovation. And, one of the things that incoming president said would happen day one was that he would be replaced. So instead of being replaced, he decided to get out and get in front of the horse. So I think it's going to be even tougher for whoever steps in and how they want to approach this. And I guess, Josh, to kick it to you, like, who do you think potentially could step into this role, and how are they going to have to approach Web3 as we head into this new administration?
Well, I haven't been following the latest nominations for the role yet. I'm sure there's a lot of polymath betting going on here, and this is probably one of the more critical roles in the new administration to appoint. And also, it looks like there'll also be a crypto appointee potentially in the cabinet or in the close circle of the White House as well, which will be really interesting. One thing I'll say is, I don't envy anyone's job in the brink of FTX and Terra Luna and what happened to the industry. And there's always been a need for the right regulations. And I think the pendulum swung a little bit too far from one direction to the other in this case. And unfortunately, it wasn't just the quote bad actors that have been poked at. It's been, any actors. And the SEC has leveraged the ambiguity to their advantage whenever possible. So this might be where things continue. Had an interesting conversation with several lawyers about this recently, one representing US policy, one globally. The SEC has had a history of embracing ambiguity because it benefits them. So I think the really interesting possibility for the industry is this new administration willing to just make things less ambiguous. I think we've seen in our industry the ability to innovate and do creative things once things are clear. The issue right now is that everything's hypothetical, if-then statements. It's very hard to run a business. It's very hard to create new technology if you don't know what the rules are of the game, or if the rules are changing in the middle of the game, or if you're stuck with rules that that happen after you start the game and it's applied retroactively. And that's been what's going on. And that's why Gensler has been the arch enemy of the industry. So I'm hoping that whatever happens, we have a rule book to work with.
Yeah, I would put that back on you guys to say, like, isn't the SEC though supposed to be for the consumer? And so what you're talking about, Josh, is very much a business side argument, but aren't they there to protect the investors, protect the people we keep talking about being onboarded into the crypto world?
Sure. And I would say having a rule book that is defined is good for consumers as well. If new things come up that need to be regulated, let's deal with them, but let's put all the rules out there and have sort of a playbook. I think this is the challenge with AI. This is the challenge with crypto. The government needs to figure a way to be progressive on emerging technology and reap the benefits for consumers and business owners.
And just to add like one more new flair to something that's happening at the time of this recording, Elon recently came out, since he's going to be part of the Department of Government Efficiency, aka Doge, they're going to be going after the IRS to audit them. So obviously IRS, SEC, two different departments, but of the same vein. And so just as we're talking about consumers, it's really going to be interesting to see how the new administration really tries to switch things up from where they've been over the last several years as it relates to Web3.
What's next, January?
Well, let's talk about Web3 gaming. Is it finally reaching its height? A report from Game7, a Web3 gaming company, was recently released. One of the main takeaways that will be no surprise to you two is that Telegram has captured 21% of new Web3 game launches in 2024. So, what are you guys seeing? I think you've been talking to so many Web3 companies in gaming over the last year at these conferences. Are you guys gamers yourself? So have a unique perspective on this?
Yeah, I got plenty of takes on this. So, of the group, I'm probably the biggest gamer. But some other things that was in that report that I want to bring up that I think is really interesting is that when you look at just who is leading game development, the APAC region, so Asian Pacific region, they contributed 39% towards new Web3 games. And then North America's next at 36%. Truly, when we go over to things like Korea Blockchain Week, Token 2049, even DevCon, you can see all of these builders and a lot of them going towards games. The other thing to look at that was from this report that I think is really important is just looking at layer 2 and layer 3s, which has 57% of new games utilizing these networks. Because one of the biggest challenges of building this is that when people were building before, it was very expensive to build on blockchain, even for people to do interactions. And so by making it more cost effective and again, building out just good games that at the back end of it, you don't necessarily know what's happening, but you know at the front end for your end consumer, like this is just a good game at its core. I think there's been a big shift over the last several years towards building more of that and having that stickiness, which has been great. But the other thing that's happened through this bear market is that, project discontinuations have gone down by 84%, which means that these games are becoming more sustainable. They're finding out ways to continue to grow. And especially for indie developers, which 90% of all of the new games that are being built in Web3 are coming from indies. So they're being agile, they're being extremely efficient in making sure that they're getting the most bang for their buck, but they're also, again, leaning into making a good quality game. So I think this is a really good indication of where the market is headed as it relates to Web3 gaming. I myself have been bullish on Web3 gaming for a long time and continue to be so. And this report really just re-amplified that for myself. But Josh, when you were looking at this report, what did you take away from it?
Yeah, I think there's still some bolts to sort of see this industry get to the next level. The fact that layer 2, layer 3 solutions are getting traction could help address the integration scalability considerations and create a more customized gaming environment. I think another thing that I found interesting is the proactive regulatory guidelines in South Korea, the EU, while US, China is still navigating a more cautious approach. Hopefully, that does shift as we talked about. One additional component to all this that's not in the report, but it's on my mind is the intersection between real world assets and gaming and blockchain. We've seen that narrative come out stronger. And the gaming industry is always the first to innovate. We've seen that with Telegram. We've seen that with skins. Some of the most predominant NFT use cases happen in gaming in the early days. So I wouldn't be surprised to see DeFi and real world assets enter the gaming space, especially if some of the regulatory hurdles get loosened a little bit more. The reality is we are progressing in this concept of a creator economy. The younger generations are looking at virtual ways to make a living in gaming is one of their passions, and it crosses both genders. It crosses all types of social economic landscapes. So I think this sort of report made me feel a little bit bullish. In the previous report, their point was a lot of dry powder has been deployed. Now it's wait and see. And now I think we're at the point where we're actually seeing some of the results, and we'll continue to see those results. I think it goes without saying that 2025 is a critical year in sort of the evolution of the Web3 gaming space.
Well, somewhat relatedly, another report from a gaming company that is gamifying financial literacy came out. Pip World pushed out a report, and it's making some waves. They claim that the crypto community's financial literacy rate is dangerously low at 25%, which is half the US average overall. Within the segments they looked at, day traders came in at the lowest literacy rate at 27%, with whales then getting almost a solid A at 96%. I am new to this space myself, and the learning curve is really steep. But since joining up with you guys, I've really seen Edge of Company taking a role in crypto education in a, information education, but in an entertaining way.
Yeah, that's a statistic that's concerning, but also makes me feel inspired about what we're doing with the Edge of Company and the Edge of NFT and our other content channels and in real life events. I think education and emerging technology and culture go hand in hand. You can't benefit from things you can't understand. And I think as an industry, we're constantly trying to up our game with making concepts in technology relatable. There's so many websites that I look at in our industry, and I wonder who's the target audience, because it's all terminology that doesn't land for the typical consumer, and at the end of the day, ETFs and these products are great, but if we truly want people to go into the pool and not dip their toes in the pool, we have to explain to them what's happening. And it's a great opportunity and privilege that we have doing content like this, like our long form interviews, like panels, where we really do try to break it down in terms of, what this stuff is all about and what are the implications on society. Richard, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so financial literacy is one of the main reasons I got into this space, because I wanted to first learn more about this, but also wanted to educate others on how they could participate in the great opportunity that is crypto. So I have a background in traditional finance, doing wealth management, and then got into crypto back in 2018 and wanted to start first creating education around this, just to teach people about the different opportunities that are here in a safe way. One of the things that most people think when these bull cycles happen, you have all these new people coming in and they all think they're traders, and they're not. They quickly learn they are not traders, because most of the time you're going to fail. You're going to be wrong most of the time. But if you come in as an investor and you have a longer term vision, then it's a lot easier for you to go and find opportunities and be here for a long haul and see the returns that you potentially want to be seeing. And so how do you present that in a fair way? How do you do it without shilling and like having something to sell? Like, as you can tell with the Edge of team, like, we're not shillers. We're here to educate. We're here to provide information, and we're here to help you with your due diligence, right? So when you're going to even look at a product to potentially become a part of, you want to know about the core team. You want to know what they're building. You want to know their roadmap. You want to know, where they're headed and what is their long-term vision, because you don't want to just come in for a quick second and then think that they might be gone in the next several months. You want to know that they're going to be here for the long haul. And so one of the things that we do through our education and through our interviews is getting you to get exposure to what are these new projects and these new opportunities, understanding what they do, and then giving you the tools to be empowered to then make decisions from there. So we don't give financial advice in the sense of go buy this thing, but we give you the information to feel empowered to go do the next steps. So I am not shocked to hear about this report, but as things turn more bullish, we are here to be your friends and to educate you along the way so that you can feel empowered to make good decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. As the industry gets more heated, so do the scammers come out from all, nooks and crannies to take advantage of that. So we have to close that gap. And, certainly listening to this show, passing it on to a friend or two is one way to do that. I think that it's always good to take bite-sized chunks. This industry can be quite overwhelming. There's so much going on, and it's an opportunity to dive in with sort of caution and interest. And I think conservative sort of baby steps is the approach that's necessary, given this statistic, which I wasn't completely familiar with beforehand, but not surprised by.
Well, then you guys must be pros at talking to your family about crypto at Thanksgiving. Our last story is a fun but actually very relatable article from CoinMarketCap's Jonathan Isaac. He shared some practical talking points about how to discuss Bitcoin and crypto's broader impacts around the holiday table, maybe without getting too far into politics if that is avoidable. So what's your guys' take on this? How do you discuss this?
Yeah, so it is interesting. In the last bull cycle, when we were headed to the bear, it was the first time, because I'd been in the crypto space again since 2018, and this was, I think, 2021 Thanksgiving, and everyone was like unsolicited asking me about all advice about crypto and everything else, and I was like, this is probably the top. The difference this year is that I don't genuinely believe we're at the top of this cycle yet, and so what's happened in the last 3 years? Obviously we went through a bear. We went through a cycle of everything going down, everyone thinking like, oh, crypto's dead again. And now like you have new all-time highs. Bitcoin almost hit 100,000. Everyone's paying attention again. They're like, oh my gosh, looks like you were right. Like this thing isn't going anywhere. Now there's ETFs. Now there's all this other stuff. I see it all over TV. Like the interest is there. And I think the way that you break it down for most people, what I say now is that, again, you are not a trader, you are an investor. And if you're looking at the future of what crypto is, Bitcoin is the tried and true, been here the longest, and is going to continue to be here into the future. So start there, learn about what it is, how you can be involved, go from there. And then if you want to learn about other projects, you come to resources like us at Edge of, where we can introduce to some of these other things that can make sense to you, like real world assets, Bitcoin layer twos and layer ones, layer twos, everything else that we talk about. And you can start to slowly get into the other things, but your safest place is to start is Bitcoin. And you don't even have to look at politics. You can go back and just look at the long existence, do a quick history lesson on that, and people can really start to digest it. So that's my first approach to it. But Josh, what's been your approach?
Yeah, you mentioned something I think it speaks to my heart, which is the reason we started this podcast originally in March of 2021 was to learn. And I think, leading with curiosity and giving people a chance to, develop their own thoughts and conclusions over a period of time is really important. Obviously, mentioning the nonpartisan nature of this and how different countries have adopted and applied the benefits different ways. I think talking about some of the unique use cases that could hit home that resonate with individuals. One of our investors mentioned that they're tokenizing a durian farm in Malaysia. I think that's a great sort of real world use case of what tokenization could be. So trying to find those types of examples that could resonate, everyone understands investing in a company and getting a yield on that, how crops have a yield every year. It's a pretty interesting analogy. So that might be one to try this time around. It's a fun one too, because everyone has an opinion on durian. Beyond that, I would say, talking about the history of Bitcoin, which is really fascinating. There's so many cool documentaries that have popped up recently on Netflix. So maybe, save yourself some extra vocal cord tenacity and have pop in a movie or something and let that do some talking and then be part of the conversation thereafter. So just a few ideas.
Well, I think a lot of people have heard of Bitcoin. And I think the other one that's really penetrated popular culture is meme coins. They've heard of the meme coins. So what would you tell people at Thanksgiving about meme coins? Is that a good place to get started with crypto? Richard didn't really say that, but that's what's coming up on people's radar and that's what they're hearing about.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's just call it what it is. Meme coins is a very fundamental, form of gambling. And, these things crash and burn as quickly as they go up. And this has been a consistent theme, and you never really know what's happening behind the scenes. So definitely not an advocate of starting with meme coins on your crypto journey. Would encourage folks to look at the big caps, not financial advice first, and sort of dollar cost average in to the market with the small amount of their overall asset portfolio. I always look at the 1% rule, 1% of what you're investing, start there and then build from there and just get familiar with the environment. I'll also mention, another sort of conversation I'm sure will come up with folks that are in the NFT industry, creators and artists, is where's the future of NFTs and where that's going. I don't think any of us truly know, but this building block of our industry is still being utilized by projects every day, by layer ones, by layer twos. There's a lot of interesting new concepts around membership that are coming out. I think that's here to stay, but there's also a broader conversation to be had at the Edge of Company and Edge of NFT. You guys have seen our content broaden over the last year because there's so many more fun things to talk about than there was even 6 months ago, and the industry is changing really fast. So we're thinking about that in terms of how we continue to broaden our umbrella of what we educate folks on and the type of entertaining content that we want to bring to the table. So look for some fun changes as we move into the next year. Richard, your thoughts?
Yeah, meme coins are gonna hold a lot of discussions. I actually talked to a cousin yesterday about this because they're like, I want to get into Bitcoin, but I can't just spend 100K to own one. I was like, well, just that education of you don't have to spend that much money. You can spend $10. You can spend $25. You can the fact that you can spend a little bit to own a little bit. It's just a concept that most people don't understand, because for most people who are investing in the stock market, everything else, they know they have to spend the entire amount to own one, right? So the fractionalized opportunity that's there is one aspect of it. But then when you're thinking like, okay, you look at the price of Doge and you're like, oh, I can afford 40 cents. I can go own a couple of those. Of course, the eyes are drawn to a lot of these memes. And when you look at your biggest ROIs during these bull cycles, usually they're memes. But what they don't say is that 99% of these memes fail. And even for the projects that get in and they do well, they might have done well for a certain amount of time. But if you get in late, you're the exit liquidity. So you're getting at the top and you're selling low. Like it's hard to time that stuff. So the way that Josh was explaining it, like let's say you have $100 that you're going to invest. Let's say that you reserve 10% of that for your memes. If you want to go mess around with $10 and put it here or there, figure that part out, do some day trading with memes, have at it. But you don't spend a good portion of whatever that investment strategy is towards memes, because it's your highest risk and your highest chance of losing your investment. So I would say don't participate, but I wouldn't say go all in on that side of the biz. But again, not financial advice.
Not financial advice at all. But that is a wrap for today's discussion on the latest hot topics. We've covered Gary Gensler's upcoming resignation, potential impact on the crypto industry, the evolving Web3 gaming ecosystem with a new report from Game7, the alarming gap in crypto financial literacy, and how to tackle those crypto conversations with your family during the holidays. These topics showcase just how dynamic and diverse our industry is. So share your thoughts with us, comment below, or hit us up on social media.
Thank you for tuning into the Edge of NFT. I'm Richard here with Josh and January signing off. Remember to stay secure, stay curious, and catch you on the flip side.